So I can talk about what's happening in US. And last week I tried to apply a small loan for putting a solar roof on my home. I mean, it's like maybe $65,000, $70,000 of expense. The system, I'm just walking you through how the system works. It's like 5 minutes for me to apply for it. And as soon as I applied to some bank's website, they asked me what was the first address you were living when you came to this United States. Now think about it, I migrated 20 years ago, but they have that data. And I had to scratch my head and remember the address. Then they asked me, everything from the moment I went to US 20 years ago, they had this data which we have been talking about, compiled in such a way through, and the foremost important thing which I'm really passionate about is, it's called public policy, which you're calling about digital public goods. When the public policy is implemented, they implement in such a way that there are several stakeholders throughout the process. And everybody should be able to use that uniform public policy in a manner they feel appropriate and useful. So even the credit rating company is using the same database to pull my information. Banks are using the same database to give me to lend me money. Even the car company is pulling the same database to see the history of my credit and other things. So yes, so it's digital public infrastructure, digital public good, but it comes from the public policy. That's the point I wanted to make. So one person got lending from a bank, e-rickshaw puller. Now let's say, think about this situation. If the same person set up an academy, set up a rickshaw, or if he can from one rickshaw to 1,000 rickshaws or 100 rickshaws, he can expand his business. That is expanding a business from micro entrepreneurship to macro level. And that is where the difference comes when we talk about the scale of a business. Because yes, you would have tremendous amount of examples where several people like Ola copied Uber was the original model, but there are 500 other Uber type of models which is happening all over the world. But how many are really scaling their single business model? As they said this morning, right? You have one idea for the entire village, or you have 10 ideas for one village. So you have to decide how you want to scale your micro entrepreneurship, that idea, to a macro level, and put a process in the system where it works flawless. Flawless means absolutely flawless. Website, I'll give you an example. We have a Obamacare launch, and there are some doctors, they would understand what I'm talking about, 2008, and they launched insurance healthcare for 2.5 million people. Suddenly their website crashed in the middle of the night. Everybody was rushing. They said it's a free insurance happening in United States. In the United States, their website crashed. For next 48 hours, it became a big news on CNN. Everybody was talking about it. Obamacare failed. Obamacare failed. Their website crashed. They're not able to accept the registrations. And it was just a technological blooper, nothing else. So sometimes, you really have to see when you're talking about taking at a different scale from micro to macro, the business model, reimbursement model. Like one thing we always see in I'll give you an example of our business model. Mr. Nayak is here. You were talking about Omega Healthcare. There are thousands of employees they need now, right? When I moved to United States 20 years ago, we have the similar business model. The internet was like 32 kbps. And I don't think so in India there was internet at that time, but dial-up internet was there. So there was no scope of transferring data from United States to India. So when I went there, I used to work in a doctor's office as a medical biller, technician, IT guy, everything. So there was no way I could scale that business model. So time passes by 1 year, and then suddenly they launched this DSL connections, or high-speed internet connection. The whole thing changed because then we had a flexibility of work from home. But again, there was no flexibility in India because India was far behind at that time. But 10 years ago, fast forward, when we have all broadband, Geo came in the last 4 or 5 years, Now we have employees here. Omega has thousands of employees. Your skilling program, you have people here, and anybody can work from home. It's a transforming technology and transforming example how you can scale. Now, the work which I was doing, it was a home-based work. We used to go to the doctor's office, collect medical records, take it to our home, send the bills by hand. So the whole business model has transformed just by using the technology. And that came from public policy, that came from public infrastructure, that came from different stakeholders who are playing a role at every level. Right. So everything works in that.
If I may.
Everybody here using CRMs, how many people are using CRM? Just raise your hand, or aware of CRM, any CRM software. Have you heard about HubSpot? Okay, I don't know if it exists in India or not, but so HubSpot was launched probably, I think, 10 years ago in US. Launched by two very good Indian entrepreneurs, Dharmesh and one more guy. Now, initially it was an enterprise product and very expensive. I remember I was starting my company and I wanted to buy it, and it was like beyond my kind of. Then they realized over a period of time that no small businesses in US is adopting CRM, because there was a couple of Salesforce launched and then a couple of other softwares launched, and they made it free. So HubSpot was kind of compelled to make their platform free for micro entrepreneurs. So at that time, so initially for 1 year we paid them some fee. That's next year when the time comes for renewal, we said, well, we can't afford you. So they said, oh, don't worry about it, we made it free for you. They didn't want to lose us as customers.
There is an India equivalent as well. Is it Tukan or who? So there is this guy
right.
who was based out of Nasik or Nagpur, one of the small cities, and his dad used to run an electrical goods shop,
right.
and he just wanted to figure out how to sort of digitize his own accounts receivable and accounts payable.
So now,
and he created an app which is now being used by millions of small shopkeepers across India. So sometimes literally India and Indian entrepreneurs can figure out their own problems and solutions.
Yeah, but it was an American solution, and at that time this CRM was like hot, because every small entrepreneur, bigger entrepreneurs, they all are trying to, because in order to scale you have to do some kind of automation, and in order to do marketing automation, that was social media was coming up, MailChimp, different type of email software, different marketing strategies was launching. So nobody was able to crack that code, and they did. And at the time when it was really needed, they made it free for micro entrepreneurs. Within 1 year, they launched their IPO, and now I think HubSpot is pretty good when it comes to IPO. Their IPO is still making money for investors as a company. So sometimes you have to see that the software which you made, what is an opportunity and who is paying for it. We call it a reimbursement strategy, because if you're not able to figure out who is paying for your solution or service, no matter how impactful it is, it's not going to be useful, or probably somebody is not going to use it who should be using it. So reimbursement is something which is very critical, even in Indian context. If somebody comes up with brilliant ideas, or give me opportunity I find in Indian at a larger level is that the data is fragmented here. Every state has their own data. Every solution, if they are building a solution, they have their own data. Hospital has their own data. They are doing something in IT, but everybody has the data. So data is sitting in a fragmented pockets. So if we would have a uniform public policy which will define where the data will reside, who will own the data, who would have the access of that data, and what would be the levels of access of that data, I think that would be the starting point. I mean, it is huge. It's a sea. So, but at some point, public policy should be able to control the data. I mean, they have done it in US. I'm very impressed the way we have done it there. From the moment you enter into the United States, your data is preserved there, and it's shared between only those parties who really need to have an access. So that would be the ideal situation. Or even more than that, he said that we don't have this bank statement system, what he's talking about. We have problems like HIPAA. We can't disclose medical records to each other. So we have different type of problems. But here we can solve some of the problems because the way things are going and the way people are solving the problems. I'm very positive.
Thank you.
Yeah.